Hi everyone, welcome to the one-on-one session today with the inimitable Dave McClure, founder of 500 Startups, one of the most interesting and controversial VCs around today. We're all dying to hear your thoughts on the Middle East, but I just wanted to ask you quickly if you believe that being based in Silicon Valley is an advantage for a startup, or if you believe that anywhere with internet access and if you have the brains and the know-how that you can make it happen.
If you kind of look at what Silicon Valley looked like 15 to 20 years ago, it's actually easier to do a startup in almost any place in the world right now than it was to do a startup 20 years ago in Silicon Valley. And, I think people tend to forget that. You know, there's still some challenges, I think, with payments and logistics, and there's probably still significant challenges with access to capital just because of the limited number of investors. Most environments, including this one around the world, the critical limiting factor to ecosystem development is almost always the investment community itself. It's not usually the entrepreneur community. Most critical factor, in my opinion, is just simply writing checks and writing lots of small checks in particular. Usually the investment community is waiting for other things to happen before they begin that process, and actually it's the act of writing that check which actually creates an ecosystem in many cases. So if anything, I would say the investor community here is still too timid and not jumping in quite enough. And they're probably also concentrating bets in too small a portfolio size and writing too large checks. So, you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm still very optimistic about the potential for the region. And there's just way too much talk about why there's, you know, potential roadblocks or imbalances, which really just aren't excuses whatsoever. The opportunities here are really huge, and people should just jump in.
Let's talk about some of these barriers to entry. Why there might be
no
some
barriers to entry. It is cheaper than ever to do a startup now. There are tons of people online. It does not take much money. Like, there are not that many barriers. You need to raise a little capital. That's what you need to do. Investors and entrepreneurs who keep talking about the barriers, you are the problem. You are creating the problem. There is no barrier. There's lots of people around who want to buy shit online. Produce something for them to buy. I have a bias against people who are just in it for being an entrepreneur. I'd like people to be passionate about solving problems more than passionate about being entrepreneurs. There's tons of excuses and reasons why not to do a startup. So if you have excuses or reasons why not to, then you shouldn't. Generally speaking, I don't want to be convincing people to jump into doing startups. But if you have that insanity, try and focus on solving the problem, hopefully in a way that people will pay for it. You know, I think, again, monetization and figuring out a transactional model that's straightforward, at least in emerging markets where access to capital is more challenging, that's probably quite